What if the biggest thing standing between you and a fatter savings account has nothing to do with willpower? No app blocking your favorite delivery service. No guilt-tripping notification telling you that you've overspent on dining out again. For more than 100 years, one country has quietly been proving that saving money isn't about self-control at all. It's about attention. In this video, we're breaking down the deceptively simple Japanese method that some users and outlets claim can help cut monthly spending by up to 40%, using nothing but a notebook, a pen, and 4 questions. In this video, we cover why just use more willpower is one of the worst strategies for saving money, the century-old Japanese method built entirely around a notebook, the woman who invented it, and why she invented it, the 4 categories and 4 questions that make it work, the psychology of why simply writing something down changes your behavior, whether that 40% number actually holds up. Let's start with the problem. Spending money today has almost no friction. You tap a card, you click a button, a delivery driver shows up 20 minutes later, and somehow your bank balance is $60 lower and you can't quite explain why. Most people respond to this by trying to white-knuckle their way through it, cutting out coffee, deleting the shopping app, setting a strict budget they abandon by day 9. It rarely works, for the same reason strict diets rarely work. Restriction creates a rebound. You deprive yourself, you crack, and you usually overcorrect in the other direction. And it's gotten worse, not better, in the last few years. Buy now, pay later options split a single purchase into invisible little pieces. Subscription services quietly renew themselves in the background every month without you ever having to say yes again. Shopping apps run on algorithms specifically built to shrink the gap between I saw it and I bought it down to almost nothing. None of that is an accident. Friction is the enemy of a sale, so modern spending has had almost every trace of friction engineered out of it. Which might mean the fix isn't another app promising to do the thinking for you. It might be the opposite. Something that puts the friction back in, on purpose. So here's the twist. The method we're talking about today doesn't ask you to restrict anything. It doesn't tell you to stop buying coffee or cancel your subscriptions. It just asks you to look closely every single day. It's called Kakeibo, and it comes from Japan. The word is written, and it translates roughly to household financial ledger. It was created in 1904 by a woman named Hani Motoko, who is often credited as Japan's first female journalist. She introduced the system through a women's magazine during the Meiji era, a period when Japan was modernizing at breakneck speed and household finances were becoming more complicated by the day. At a time when women had far less financial independence and often couldn't own property outright, Motoko handed them a tool that gave them real control over the one thing they usually did manage, the household budget. Her insight was strangely modern. She understood that most people don't overspend because they lack information. They overspend because they never actually sit with the information long enough for it to mean anything. A bank statement is data. A Kakeibo forces reflection. Here's roughly how it works. At the start of each month, you write down your income and your fixed, unavoidable expenses, rent, utilities, transportation. Whatever's left gets divided across 4 categories. The first is survival spending, groceries, essentials, things you genuinely cannot avoid. The second is optional spending, takeout, shopping, entertainment, the things you choose rather than need. The third is culture, books, classes, a museum ticket, anything that expands you rather than just maintains you. The fourth is the wildcard category, unexpected costs, gifts, repairs, the stuff that always shows up right when you don't want it to. Notice what's missing here. There's no category for coffee or clothes or streaming services the way a lot of Western budgeting spreadsheets demand, with 15 or 20 microcategories to sort every receipt into. That's deliberate. The more categories a system asks you to juggle, the more decisions you have to make every single time you spend money. And decision fatigue is exactly what causes people to abandon a budget within a couple of weeks. 4 broad buckets are just few enough to keep in your head without a spreadsheet, but specific enough to actually mean something when you look back at them. Every single day, you write down what you spent and which category it belongs to. Not in an app, by hand. And that detail actually matters more than it sounds like it should. Then, once a week, you total things up and ask yourself a version of the same 4 questions Motoko built the system around. How much money do I have? How much would I like to save? How much am I actually spending? And how can I improve next week? At the end of the month, you ask those same 4 questions again, except now you're comparing your intentions against what actually happened. Now here's where it gets interesting, because this isn't just a nice ritual, there's a genuine psychological mechanism behind why it works. Researchers have documented something called the meme measurement effect. The finding that simply asking people to track or predict a behavior can shift that behavior, even without any advice, warning, or intervention attached to the measurement itself. In other words, The act of observing yourself changes what you do before you've even tried to change anything. Kakeibo is basically that principle, weaponized for your wallet. You're not being told to spend less. You're just being forced to notice every single day exactly where your money is going and why. For most people, that noticing alone is enough to quietly reshape their habits. There's also a well-studied concept in behavioral economics called mental accounting, the idea that people don't actually treat money as one single, interchangeable pool. We mentally sort it into buckets, and we treat each bucket differently depending on how it's labeled and how visible it is to us. Digital spending is invisible almost by design. A tap, a swipe, a number that changes without you touching a single physical bill. Kakeibo drags that invisible spending back into the light by literally making you write the number down, category by category, in your own handwriting. And that's the other reason paper seems to outperform apps for a lot of people, even in 2026. Typing takes almost no cognitive effort. Your brain barely registers it. Handwriting is slower. It forces a half-second of friction between the purchase and the record, which is exactly the half-second where reflection can sneak in. The entire method is built on being slightly inconvenient, on purpose, because convenience is precisely what got people into frictionless overspending in the first place. So, about that 40% figure in the title. It's worth being straight with you here. There's no single controlled experiment proving that everyone who tries Kakeibo saves exactly 40%. The number floating around online varies. Some press coverage has cited savings of up to 35%. Others report different results, and plenty of individual users report far more modest numbers, or none at all. What does have real support is the broader pattern. Research on expense tracking consistently finds that people who track their spending in detail tend to reduce discretionary, optional bucket spending, simply because visibility changes behavior. Kakeibo became genuinely popular in the West after writer Fumiko Chiba published a guided journal based on the method in 2017, which introduced a much wider international audience to a practice that had already been quietly running in Japanese households for over a century. Before you try it, it's worth knowing the two ways most people accidentally sabotage this. The first is setting an unrealistic savings goal on day one, deciding you'll save half your paycheck this month, burning out by week 2, and quietly deciding the whole system doesn't work. The goal is supposed to be honest, even boring, not aspirational. The second mistake is moving the whole thing into a budgeting app the moment it feels tedious. That's understandable, but it also quietly removes the exact friction that made the method effective in the first place. If you want technology to help you remember to open the notebook, fine, but the writing itself should probably stay analog. So if you want to actually try it, here's the whole thing distilled into 10 minutes. Grab a notebook, write your income at the top, subtract your fixed bills, and write down what's left. Set one honest savings goal for the month. Not an aggressive one, just one you'll actually stick to. Draw 4 columns on the next page: survival, optional, culture, and extra. For the next 7 days, write down every single purchase you make, no matter how small, under the right column. At the end of the week, don't judge yourself. Just look. Ask the 4 questions. Adjust. Repeat. No app. No subscription. No tracking your spending habits being sold to advertisers. Just a notebook, and the surprisingly powerful discovery that most of us don't need more discipline. We just need to actually look at what we're doing. So here's the real question. Is your money disappearing because you lack willpower, or because you've never actually had to look it in the eye? Have you tried Kakeibo, or do you already have a money habit with a weirdly good track record? Drop it in the comments. The best one might end up in a future video. And if this changed how you think about budgeting, hit subscribe, because we've got more of these hiding in plain sight tricks coming.